Hello, welcome to Off the Shelf Reviews.
I'm feeling ravenous.
And I'm Gary. And today we're going to review and discuss Ravenous, which came out in 1999 from director Antonia Bird. Iain, why don't you give us the synopsis for Ravenous?
Well, the story follows Captain Boyd, played by Guy Pearce, who is being convicted of being a coward and sent to Fort Spencer in California. He spends his time there with a small group of soldiers until Robert Carlyle's character, Colquhoun, turns up. Robert Carlyle explains that he was with a group and something bad has happened, so Boyd leads some soldiers out there and realises that the story may not be completely told to them.
This is a film that also had a troubled production. Antonia Bird, she was not the original director for the film. The original director was fired 2 weeks into production. The studio then hired another director, and the cast and the crew literally rebelled on set and said, we're not going to work for this director. He doesn't understand the project. And it was Robert Carlyle who said, well, if you're struggling for a director, how about my friend Antonia Bird, who I'd worked with on previous films?
Yeah.
She'd be a good candidate. And even when she turned up on set and rolled action, none of the actors knew their places or what to do, and it was a completely different style of shoot compared to the TV shows that she'd worked on before, like Casualty, EastEnders, or The Bill.
Yeah.
But given all of that, her direction in this film, I think, is absolutely fantastic.
Captain John Boyd. War hero, huh? So, the brass decided to reward you with a little appointment to the California Sun?
I'd heard a lot about this film and never got round to watching it. It seemed really, really interesting when I'd heard about it back in 99. And I was a bit of a fan of Robert Carlyle. I mean, I can't remember if this came out after Train Spotting. And I was just like, well, I need to get around to watching it. Never have. In like 20 years. 20 years. Not ever seen and sat down and watched
I'm exactly
Ravenous.
the same, but this is like one of the only films I can remember not renting from Blockbuster.
Yeah.
I used to go there all the time, and I'm like, yeah, I'll rent Deep Blue Sea.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie Lee Curtis in Virus, I'll rent that. I rented everything.
Everything around Ravenous and not Ravenous.
I'd picked up the box, the VHS case for Ravenous, like 6 times.
Yeah.
Looked at it and read the back and just went, I'll watch something else. And I'd forgotten about the film. And yeah, and now I would say it's an absolute shame that this film is, in my opinion, deserved of a cult classic status. And I'm going to say to you now, I don't normally do this, but spoilers for this film, because if you've not seen the film, I highly, highly recommend it now. This is a dark horror comedy fantasy revolving around themes of cannibalism.
Yes,
and it is,
that's it.
And it is, in my opinion, a perfect spell. This film put me in a trance, and I absolutely loved it. So if you're interested in this film, go and watch it. Please do.
But if you're still watching the review, we follow Captain Boyd, played by Guy Pearce. Now, I'm going to admit, I'm a bit of a Guy Pearce fan. Ever since watching Lockout, that guy's acting credibility went up in my eyes. But he's always been there. I mean, looking all the way back to Memento, absolutely brilliant film. And seeing him in this, his Captain Boyd was leading a platoon during the Mexican-American War, and his platoons got attacked and they started getting wiped out, and he played dead. So immediately you're looking at his character thinking, is he the good guy? But then when you watch how the battle sequences are delivered to you, because they're delivered to you in flashbacks, and what he's flashbacking to, he gets this medal for being. He gets this medal from his commander for taking over the Mexican army, the Mexican army command post. He'd hidden in with the dead bodies of his platoon, and then when he'd gotten there, climbed out, taking everybody prisoner. So they were like, "Oh, you won the battle for us, but you're still a coward." And it's that sequence where you're watching them all eat meat, and you're just like, ooh, I'm getting this uneasy tone from this movie.
It's the exaggerated sounds of everyone
Yes.
cutting meat and eating. It's just the sound of it just gets amplified. I also think it's really funny that Guy Pearce is a vegetarian. And he's in a film about cannibalism.
Yeah.
And that whole scene where they're just eating that meat. And of course, there's scenes later on in the film, and Robert Carlyle says in the commentary track that any time that he was forced to eat and chew on the meat, as soon as the director yelled cut, he was spitting it all out because he's vegetarian. Now, the beginning of this film, it kind of put me on ice.
Okay.
Because I'm going to go off on a tangent here, but this film reminded me of a childhood recurring nightmare where... I know. This is like before I'd even seen films like Saving Private Ryan, but I used to have a recurring nightmare where I was a soldier or a civilian under Nazi occupation and I would play dead.
Okay.
And it was just so weird that I'd completely forgotten these recurring nightmares, and this film reminded me of it instantly, and it put goosebumps, down my spine and up my arms. It was just...
So this film hit you somewhere personal before it really got in.
But of course, this was dormant, lost memories that this film just instantly brought back, and I was just trying to... And I instantly sympathised with Boyd's character, and at the same time, understanding his cowardice and him dealing with it, and that's a major theme in the film also. The film also, right at the start, hits you with Friedrich Nietzsche's comment that he who fights with monsters should look to it that he himself does not become a monster.
Yeah.
And then the film instantly goes, "Eat me," by Anonymous. And it's just like, okay, so you know that should have told you right there and then that this is not a straight-faced horror film.
No. Yeah, that's the thing. When I saw that as well, I was just like, there's going to be some dark comedy here. But it's very low down because of the kind of historical edge that the film has got. It isn't parodying that era of time. It tries to stick as close to it as it can. And so when you see Boyd go off to the Colorado mountains, I think it is, in California, and he's heading to Fort Spencer, as soon as they said California, I'm like, oh, sun, sea, and sand, it's going to be great. Snow, mountains, wood, this is before they decided to pave everything in highways, and stick houses everywhere. You've just got this brilliantly built set, their little fort, and we watch Boyd come in and start to get introduced to all the different characters we're going to see. You have Jeremy Davis playing Private Toffler.
I remember that actor from Lost and a couple of other shows as well. Great actor.
Yeah. Also, Neil McDonough playing Private Reich.
That sequence when it cuts to him just freezing his nuts off in a frozen lake.
Private Reich, he's our soldier. I'd steer clear of him.
This actor
will go on to play M. Bison in The Secret of Chun-Li.
Now, he's had some great roles, and as you've just mentioned, some god-awful roles, but I really like him in this film.
You also have David Arquette playing Private Cleves.
And then there's Private Cleves. The over-medicated Private Cleves.
I love a bit of David Arquette every now and again,
Scream, Eight-Legged Freaks.
That's about it, I think.
What about Ready to Rumble?
Yeah, I totally forgot that one. And we also have Jeffrey Jones.
Oh.
Now, this guy's got a pretty historical film career and a pretty memorable future as well. He would be in Ferris Bueller's Day Off and Howard the Duck and obviously Ravenous and Beetlejuice, and then would have some run-ins with the law over some illicit pictures on his computer. Yeah, let's not dwell on that one for too long. But Boyd gets to the fort, introduces himself to everybody, and he's spending the evening with Colonel Hart learning the history of Fort Spencer when he notices a figure outside. Screams the alarm, everyone runs out there, and we get a very bushy looking Robert Carlyle who falls on top of them, and they have to bring him inside.
I didn't even recognise him at first.
Yeah.
Even when they drop him in the tub of warm water, I'm just like, I don't know who that is. I'm like, oh, shit, that is Robert Carlyle.
And it'll be the very next morning he wakes up, and the group all get together and try to find out what information they can get from him. And he goes on this story.
Proceeding in the snow was futile. We took shelter in a cave. Decided to wait until the storm had passed. But the storm did not pass.
And you just get wrapped into it. I just fell into it. I cheated myself by Wikipediaing this movie ages ago. But at the same time, Robert Carlyle's delivery of the group that he'd gone out with and the guy who's leading the team getting caught up in the cave, having to eat all their livestock because they're caught by this storm.
When I stepped inside that cave, the smell of meat cooking. I thank the Lord. I thank the Lord.
Your imagination paints the entire scene for you. And that's just how well written the script is. It was written by Ted Griffin. A lot of my respect for this film also comes from the brilliant dialogue.
Yes.
And Robert Carlyle as a storyteller.
Yeah, his delivery. You know there's something off about him. You know, but at the same time, you're kind of drawn in, and just like all the soldiers, as soon as Colonel Hart says, oh, there could be a woman over there being held hostage. Let's get together. Let's get 6 of us. We're going to head out.
And so for me, the theme of cowardice was there again when Robert Carlyle's character said that, he fled from his deranged captain and didn't rescue this woman. And so I was like, well, he's also dealing with the similar themes of Boyd's character. And so I was like, it's quite interesting. And
Boyd's not sure about wanting to go out.
No.
But it's like Colonel Hart's like, no, I need another officer there, so we'll get all of our guns. And they're heading out towards the cave, and George, the local Indian, has mentioned to Colonel Boyd about the Wendigo.
yes, the mythological creature that consumes the blood of men.
And the more he eats, the more he wants to. And the more he eats, the stronger he becomes.
I love that scene where he's got the skin with the picture on it, and they're like, oh, people don't do that nowadays. And then he holds up another picture of Jesus Christ, and the colonel says, well, we do that every Sunday, don't we?
White man eats the body of Jesus Christ every Sunday.
Before we get to the cave, the imagery, the background sets of, like I said, the mountains, the woods, the snow.
The cinema photography in this film is beautiful. It's really special.
And it just sets up this journey that they're going on. They start making their way to the cave, and you like I said, it's that weird bit of comedy where you should be off about Robert Carlyle's character, but it's the way the colonel keeps dropping his hat, and he keeps picking it up and dropping it and picking it up. So he's also trying to worm his way into the group and be all friendly. So when they head out, they're making their way across the mountains, and Toffler slips over and hurts himself. So they set up camp that evening, and when all the lights are off, Robert Carlyle leans over and licks him.
Well, you don't actually see it. You just hear some yelling from the tent, and they all burst in there, and Toffler is explaining that Robert Carlyle was licking his wound.
He was licking me.
What?
He was licking. No. He was licking me!
And I'm just like, what? No. Like he's the good guy. Robert Carlyle's character's the good guy. But when you see the blood on his lip, at first I was still just like, no. Like, was he?
Yeah.
And
There's something unsettling about Colquhoun. You know, it's like you said, he was there and he dabbled in a little bit of the meat. Once they get to the cave, he starts to freak out.
Yeah, he starts to freak out, and then you see him starting to dig.
Yes.
I'm like, is he digging a hole for himself? Maybe he's buried something in there.
Yes.
And it's at this point that Boyd and Reich have stumbled across a chamber after going down a ladder, and they see all the bodies strung up, and that was quite a disturbing image, actually.
Yes.
That was a really good practical effect.
Reich!
Jesus! Oh, God.
At first, I expected them just to leave, but Reich's like, no, I'm going to count the bodies. And
Yeah.
he recalls the story, and he's like, found the girl, found all the bodies, but something's not adding up here.
Who's this? Ives. Oh, Jesus.
He realizes that there's more bodies than there should be. And he goes rushing back out when they hear the panic that ensues outside.
Colquhoun is actually Colonel Ives, the leader of the group that we were told is the cannibal. And they don't hold back on the gore in this film. He just runs up to Jeffrey Jones, stabs him right in the gut, and you can hear the little twist as well. And you're thinking, he's definitely dead. He is not going to make it. George comes over the hill with his bow and arrow. Bang with his pistol goes Robert Carlyle. That's another one down. You're watching.
Yeah, but wait, this is also before George threw an axe.
Yes.
Like, great shot, George.
Well, his aim was good. There was just another body in the way. And then Colquhoun chases down Toffler. That's another gory scene. Coming across Toffler's body, Reich and Boyd can see that he's just been gutted. It's just all over the snow. And once again, the effect of blood on the snow and the woods just amplifies this horror aspect the film has.
And so Boyd and Reich come out of the cave and realize that everyone's pretty much dead. You know, they see their commander laying there, and Reich's just like, we gotta go, he's dead. And, you know, the music at this point has been unobtrusive. It's kind of been quite gentle.
Yeah.
But it also is a very strange piece of music. It took me a while to really appreciate it. But then when when the film enters this zany sort of woodland chase, where they're trying to find him and the music kicks in, I was like, this is farcical. Like, this music really does not fit this dramatic moment where they're trying to chase this killer.
It had a bit of a, like I said, a bit of a dark comedy element to it. Like,
Yes.
you should be laughing about how fun this whole horrific, violent sequence is.
Right, but I couldn't laugh at it.
Yeah.
It was I know this film is a dark, very dark comedy, but I didn't laugh that much throughout the film. When the film finished, I was laughing for a while. It was like I was afraid to laugh during the film because it shouldn't be. And when the film finished, that was when I was just like, that was hilarious and so dark and so amazing. The music in the film, though, was composed by Damon Albarn.
Yeah.
And
From Blur?
he also was the guy from that was one of the co-founders of the Gorillaz.
Yes, yeah.
And he composed 60% of the music. And the other 40% was composed by Michael Nyman. And he had composed music for films like The Piano. And their combined music score for the film, like I said, it's a bit deranged. But then, since the film's finished, I found myself listening to the soundtrack and really appreciating it.
Ives manages to kill Reich and capture Boyd. But Boyd thinks, screw this, and just leaps off the cliff. And you're thinking, there's no way he can survive this fall. And
Right.
he just tumbles all the way down. It was such a brilliant stunt. I haven't seen a good stunt like that in a long time.
I remember in the commentary, the director was saying that second unit photography was going to handle that scene. She cleared up her schedule so that she could actually be on set and film that sequence. And it's one of the sequences that she was most proud of. And it is a really great sequence. The entire shot of him coming down the trees before landing at the bottom, the sequence was done so well that I kind of put aside the implausibility of him actually surviving that fall without injury.
But
then you soon realise he's got a pretty nasty injury when you see the bone protruding from his leg and you see him forcing it back in. It's like, that's gross. That's nasty.
It's almost as bad as him stuck in that pit and Reich, he's got the knife in him, but he's still kind of alive for a bit. And I just wanted him to die. I was like, right, knock it off.
And so, we get the sequence then of Boyd with the knife cutting Reich up. And it cuts away. And I'm like, did he eat him? Did he take some bites out of him? We don't really know. But we see that Boyd's kind of got some strength back.
Yes.
And he manages to walk all the way back to camp.
I love that sequence where he's in there and he's getting cold. It's over a course of a couple of days that I think he's stuck in that hole. It's given Robert Carlyle time to gather up all the bodies of the soldiers that he's killed and take them into the cave so that, he can have a healthy meal.
Yeah.
And Boyd is left in that pit dwelling on the thought of should he or shouldn't he, to survive, eat some of Reich's flesh. And this is where kind of the mystical element of the Wendigo would come in, where we'd start to understand from the film's perspective that they're living in a world where if you eat human flesh, you rejuvenate.
I was kind of under the impression that maybe it only happened in this remote part of America. I don't know whether it was...
Well, Ives would explain later to Boyd that he'd learned the information from another Indian scout who was talking about it being used kind of all over the place. But Ives is wanting to get to a particular place in the film and in the story so that he can have a surplus amount of food constantly going so that he can stay rejuvenated for a long period.
The film also surprised me. It kept going to sort of the next setup and the next phase of the film, and I wasn't expecting it. I was expecting the film to be sort of a long, drawn-out affair.
Okay.
Like them doing the trip to the cave.
Yeah.
I thought that was the movie. They get to the cave really quickly.
Yeah.
And then when it's just Boyd left alive, I was like, okay, so Boyd now trying to survive the cannibal and making his way back to the fort. I thought that was the whole movie.
Yeah.
But he gets back to the fort, and I'm just like... I thought this film would, it just keeps going. I'm
That's it.
I was surprised that all these next setups kept occurring. I thought the film was going to be a drawn-out affair, but it's really not.
See, I got thrown off by the fact that once Boyd gets back to the fort, the Indian's sister is still there, and she's returned from a trip with David Arquette's character, and they're obviously questioning where everybody is. You went out with 6, and none of them have returned. None of these guys remember seeing Robert Carlyle's character, so they don't really believe Boyd. And so you're like, you're behind Boyd the whole way, because obviously everything you've seen. But it's when the other general turns up, bringing this new commander to Fort Spencer who's going to take over. And it happens to be Colonel Ives, Robert Carlyle, looking all tidy. He hasn't got any wounds on him. His clothes are all properly ironed. You're as shocked as Boyd is when you see him walk in, because you're just like, that's the killer. It's like letting the killer walk straight through the house holding a bloodied knife. You're thinking, what's going on? This is where, for me, I started to get the heavy influence of the vampiristic theme that was behind it. Ives is kind of wanting Boyd to carry on and kill and eat flesh with him, because he's lonely and he needs a companion.
That's right. I was surprised at this turn of events, because quite a few moments where Boyd is telling the commanders that Ives is the killer, And they're just like, no, you're crazy, and we're actually going to arrest you if you continue this lunacy. And he's like, I'll prove it. Take this man's jacket off. Look for the wounds. I shot him with a rifle.
Yeah.
Not at all. Is there a problem?
Not with you, Colonel.
And, the killings start again.
Yes.
Where Ives starts killing them off, but he's not killing off Boyd. And it turns out that he wants Boyd. He wants him as a companion to join him in this vampiric Wendigo sort of activity. And I was quite surprised by that. Now, it's also been commented on that the film has quite a homoerotic undertone, where you can sort of see that Ives perhaps is also lusting after Boyd's character.
Really?
Not so much as a companion throughout whatever it is they're going to do, but perhaps almost as a lover as well.
Kind of like a Brokeback Mountain type of thing.
The potency of someone else coursing through your veins. Someone brave. Oh, the disappointment as it dissipates. Strength slipping from your grasp. The growing, killing need to replenish.
But like Gary said, the killings start up again, and we see that Private Cleves has been killed off, and the horses have all been killed. And Boyd can't understand it because he's been following Ives around, and Ives hasn't left his eyesight. And it's not until the shock revelation where Colonel Hart reappears.
Knox?
Hello, Boyd. I hated doing that.
And we are told then that when Colonel Hart was dying outside the cave, Ives fed him the flesh because he wasn't too sure of how Boyd would react, if Boyd would fully turn. So he brought Colonel Hart on as another companion. I love they had Major Knox, the drunken veterinarian who's obviously having to deal with all the wounds that all the soldiers are getting. They kill him off and make a stew out of him.
You need any help?
No, though perhaps later you might contribute.
You let me know.
And just watching that whole sequence of Robert Carlyle, Jeffrey Jones, and Guy Pearce sitting around the table, and they're enjoying their meal, the two cannibals, but Boyd has gone for days without food at this point and is absolutely starving, but knows that he's not going to survive that very long, especially when Robert Carlyle shanks him in the gut.
And it's like, well, now you have a choice. You can eat and live, or don't eat and die.
Yeah.
And it's just great. It's just like, it's the utter temptation then. You literally have no choice but to consume human meat in order to regenerate your wounds. And it's quite a grotesque picture to paint. And, as an audience member, you're kind of sat there as well, like, what would I do in such an extreme situation?
Well, we've all seen Alive. I mean, you're on an airplane, you crash into the Andes. I'd eat you. I probably wouldn't even wait. I'd just get right onto it.
I'm still alive!
But it builds up to such a brilliant climax of the movie as well, where Colonel Ives has admitted to Boyd that the reason why he wants this outpost is because this is the one route to Mexico at that time. And so there would be many travellers coming in and out who Ives would be able to pick on and take off and have a meal here and there just to stay alive.
I love the fact that he mentions that we'd be selective
Yes.
in who we killed off as well. We wouldn't just kill off anybody.
Yeah, we wouldn't just destroy families, but you kind of get this hint as well that you don't fully trust Ives. Even after everything you've seen, I get the feeling that he could be too greedy. He'd have too much. Colonel Hart at this point has convinced Boyd to kill him off. He doesn't like seeing himself this way and would rather just have his life ended. After Boyd has killed Colonel Hart, it's then this massive fight sequence between him and Ives. They go all over the place. They're throwing themselves into walls and bringing half the fort down.
They're smacking each other with everything. And it's a pretty brutal fight sequence, but, you know, as I was watching, I was like, these two guys would be passed out or dead by now, but you got to remember they're fueled by Wendigo prophecy, I don't know, cannibalistic nature. So,
Yeah.
You know, they can keep stabbing each other and smacking each other and keep going.
That image of Robert Carlyle stood there with the bloodied cross on his forehead, that's an image to stick with you. But to fall on that giant bear trap...
That was really sneaky.
And it doesn't just end. They're collapsed on the floor. And Ives says to Boyd, as soon as you die, I'm going to eat you.
But the question is, if I die first, are you going to eat me?
The question is, if I die, what are you gonna do? Bon appetit.
It's just like, so well written. The characters are bringing those words to life, and it's just, you're watching it like, again, what would I do?
Yeah.
Would I do it? And, you know, Boyd, being the character that he is, refuses, and they both die there. It's like, wow. And then we see Martha just walk out on her own. She's like, I'm out of here. I'm done.
Yeah.
See ya. That's such a great ending. Just, you know, and then the music plays out. I'm just like, wow. So many memorable moments from the film, and a lot of it is just the dialogue. I love the "he was licking me" moment in the film. It's just crazy, and that's just when you realise the horror and the comedy that's yet to come. And I also love the sequence with Colonel Hart and Boyd, and he says to him,
So you're gonna kill me? No. No. It's lonely being a cannibal. Tough making friends.
it's just like, you know, the comedy's there, and again, at the same time, those are the main themes of the film as well, of loneliness and greed and companionship, and
Yeah.
it's so multi-layered. Absolutely. There are so many memorable sequences in the film, but it was the dialogue that just got brought to life.
For me, any of the sequences with Robert Carlyle, you know, when he first turns up and he gives them his tale, and, you know, as a first-time viewer, you'll probably get put behind him. You'll think, yeah, he's completely innocent, and get wrapped up with the soldiers. But then when he turns, you know, the fight sequence on the mountain, him killing everybody off, and then returning again as Colonel Ives, all tidy and wanting to take over the fort, you can tell that he's really thought about this. He's really planned this out. He knows what he's doing. How long he's been doing it, you don't know, but he has a plan and he's going at it. Boyd as well, Guy Pearce, he plays the coward really, really brilliantly. And then on top of that, the difficult scenarios he gets put in, like sitting there and having to watch all the other actors eat meat while being a vegetarian, that must have been really difficult. And you can see the revulsion in some of the scenes on his face. I highly, highly recommend Ravenous. If you love your blood and your guts and your gore, this is one of those films. At the same time, fine acting, this film has it. Okay, Jeffrey Jones is a bit questionable now, but let's not judge the films that he's been in. Guy Pearce is brilliant. Robert Carlyle is brilliant. Even David Arquette when he's sitting there with the Indian.
So, did anyone do anything today? We have a great sense of camaraderie here at Fort Spencer.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly recommend Ravenous. This is easily just moving up as to one of my favourite films. I was so taken aback. I don't know whether it was because I had so low expectations going into it,
Yeah.
or it's the fact that I remember never renting the film, and I feel guilty now for having never watched it until this point. But now I just want to tell everyone to go and watch this film. This, for me, is like, it's one of the most underrated films, or I will say, of all the films we have reviewed on this channel, is the most underrated film of all of them.
Wow.
The music in the film is spellbinding. The cinematography is captivating. The actors draw you into this film, and you feel you are behind the character of Boyd throughout the film. And Robert Carlyle is seducing every single person that watches this film and tempting you to join him in his mad, desperate struggle to stay alive. And not get caught, and just to consume human flesh. It's sort of the frenzy. Ravenous.
Yeah.
I wholeheartedly recommend the film. It is fantastic. You should watch it again and again.
Well, maybe not that many times.
You've got to have seconds.
Bon appetit.
Thanks for watching Off the Shelf Reviews.